नारायणं नमस् ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत् शृण्वतां स्वकतः कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तस्थो हि अभद्राणि विदुनोति श्रुतिसताम् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकीः. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28. Puranjana becomes woman in next life. Verse 27 to 28. Verse 27. Anantapare tamasi magno nashta smriti samaha शाश्वतैर अनुभूयार्तिं प्रमादसंग Synonyms: Anantapare, unlimitedly expanded; Tamasi, in the material existence of darkness; Magnaha, being merged; Nashta Smritihi, bereft of all intelligence; Samaha, for many years; Shashvatihi, practically eternally; Anubhuya, experiencing; Artim, the threefold miseries; Pramada, of woman; Sangha, by association; Dushitaha, being contaminated. Translation: due to his contaminated association with woman, a living entity like King Puranjana eternally suffers all the pangs of material existence and remains in the dark region of material life, bereft of all remembrance from many, many years. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is a description of material existence. Material existence is experienced when one becomes attached to a woman and forgets his real identity as the eternal servant of Krishna, Nashta Smritihi. In this way, in one body after another, the living entity perpetually suffers the threefold miseries of material existence. To save human civilization from the darkness of ignorance, this movement was started. The main purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is to enlighten the forgetful living entity and remind him of his original Krishna consciousness. In this way, the living entity can be saved from the catastrophe of ignorance as well as bodily transmigration. As Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur has sung, अनादि कर्म फाले पादी भावर्णवाजाले तारी बारे नाधे की उपाय एई विषय हालाहाले दीवा निशी हिया ज्वाले mana kabu sukha nahi paye. Because of my past fruitive activities, I have now fallen into an ocean of nescience. I cannot find any means to get out of this great ocean, which is indeed like an ocean of poison. We are trying to be happy through sense enjoyment, but actually, that so called enjoyment is like food that is too hot and causes burning in the heart. I feel a burning sensation constantly, day and night, and thus my mind cannot find satisfaction. Material existence is always full of anxiety. People are always trying to find many ways to mitigate anxiety. But because they are not guided by a real leader, they try to forget material anxiety through drink and sex indulgence. Foolish people do not know that by attempting to escape anxiety by drink and sex, they simply increase their duration of material life. It is not possible to escape material anxiety in this way. The word pramada sanga dushitaha indicates that apart from all other contamination, if only simply remains attached to a woman, that single contamination will be sufficient to prolong one's miserable material existence. Consequently, in Vedic civilization, one is trained from the beginning to give up attachment for women. The first stage of life is brahmachari, the second stage grihastha, the third stage vanaprastha, and the fourth stage sannyasa. All these stages are devised to enable one to detach himself from the association of women. Text 28. Tam eva manasa grahanam babhuva pramadottama anantarama vidharbhasya raja simhasya veshmani. Synonyms: Tam, her, eva certainly, manasa by the mind, grahanan accepting, babhuva became pramada woman, uttama highly situated, anantarama after death, Vidarbhasya of Vidarbha, Rajasimhasya of the most powerful king, Veshmani at the house. Translation. King Puranjana gave up his body while remembering his wife, and consequently in his next life he became a very beautiful and well situated woman. He took his next birth as the daughter of King Vidarbha in the very house of King. Purport. Since King Puranjana thought of his wife at the time of death, he attained the body of a woman in his next birth. This verifies the following verse in Bhagavad Gita 8.6. Yam yam vapi smarana bhavam tyajyatya ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tat bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers, when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. When a living entity is accustomed to think of a particular subject matter or become absorbed in a certain type of thought, he will think of that subject at the time of death. At the time of death, one will think of the subject that has occupied his life while he was awake, lightly sleeping or dreaming, or while he was deeply sleeping. After falling from the association of the Supreme Lord, the living entity thus transmigrates from one bodily form to another according to nature's course, until he finally attains the human form. If he is absorbed in material thoughts and ignorant of spiritual life, and if he does not take shelter under the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, who solves all questions of birth and death, he will become a woman in the next life, especially if he thinks of his wife. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 3.31.1, Karmanya Daiva Netrena. A living entity acts piously and impiously, and sometimes in both ways. All actions are taken into account, and the living entity is offered a new body by his superiors. Although King Puranjana was overly attached to his wife, he nonetheless performed many pious fruitive activities. Consequently, although he took the form of a woman, he was given a chance to be the daughter of a powerful king. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 6.41, Prapya Punya Kritanam Lokan Usitva Shashwatai Samaha Suchinanam Srimatam Gehi Yoga Brashto Bijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is been born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. If a person falls from the path of bhakti yoga, God realization, due to attachment to fruitive activity, philosophical speculation, or mystic yoga, he is given a chance to take birth in a high and rich family. The higher authorities appointed by Supreme Personality of Godhead thus render justice to the living entity according to the living entity's desires. Although King Puranjana was overly absorbed in thoughts of his wife and thus became a woman, he took birth in the family of a king due to his previous pious activities. The conclusion is that all our activities are taken into consideration before we are awarded another body. Narada Muni therefore advised Vyasadeva that one should take to Krishna consciousness, devotional service, and abandon all ordinary occupational duties. This advice was also given by Lord Krishna himself. Although a devotee may fall from the path of spiritual consciousness, he will nonetheless attain a human body in the home of a devotee or a rich man. In this way, one can resume his devotional service. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Kauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shri Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I like to seek blessings from all the assembled Vaishnavas and thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself and please forgive me for any shortcomings. Special obeisance unto Srila Prabhupada on his disappearance day today. We are so fortunate to have him as our great spiritual master. So, basically, in today's verse, uh, now we are understanding what will be the destiny of a person when he dies. So, when we have read in Bhagavad Gita and the verses which quotes that it's the state of mind that decides our next life, and it is also said that studying Srimad Bhagavatam is the next high level of after reading Bhagavad Gita considered to be as a PhD. So here it is very clearly mentioned with a live example of King Puranjana for the statement proving what would be the condition, what could be the next birth of a living entity with the kind of state of mind he lives the body. In chapter 16 of Gita, text 21, Traividham narkasedayam dvaram nashanam atmanaha kama krodhas tatha lobhas tasmat etat trayam tyajayet. So the main downfall of a living entity is of the materialistic kind of an attachment with a disease being associated like lust, anger, and greed. So this verse states that these are the three gates leading to this hell called lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give up these, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. These are the beginning of the demonic life. One tries to satisfy his lust, as we see in the case of King Puranjana. He was so much attached to his wife, that is nothing but the lust. And when somebody cannot fulfill the lust, it leads to anger and greed arise. So a sane man who does not want to glide down to the species of demonic life, he must try to give up these three enemies which can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility of liberation from this material entanglement. As mentioned by Srila Prabhupada, the whole material existence is full of anxiety. It is our foolishness and due to our ignorance, we try to search happiness either in the means of developing economic developments or having all other facilities, thinking that they will relieve our anxietiness. In fact, the material world itself is full of anxiety. So, where is the question of one being free from getting free from this anxiety? So, one should be very careful of these three enemies to a human life and avoid them of not being lust, anger, and greed. The more a person is freed from these three demonic qualities, the more his existence becomes pure. Then he can follow the rules and regulations enjoyed in Vedic literatures. By following the regulative principles of human life, one gradually rises himself to the platform of spiritual realization. And that is why Srila Prabhupada, on basis of this ground, he came with the kind of an structure where he talks of all the four stages which were mentioned in in our Vedic scriptures. In such a way, the Vedic scriptures and the Vedic rituals have been designed that a person is being controlled of being getting associated in the associated with the opposite sex. Here, woman means doesn't mean only it's a woman; it's equally applicable to man. So the stages of life were designed like being brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. So it gets controlled. This is kind of like a controlled version for a living entity being getting engaged with the opposite sex. The whole method was based up of giving up lust, greed, and anger. So by cultivating knowledge of this process, one can be elevated to the highest position and helps in self-realization. And self realization is only perfected in devotional service, which can lead to the liberation of the conditioned soul. So, it is required for everyone to follow the four orders of life and four status of life. In chapter 15, Bhagavad Gita, text 9, it mentions Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam Cha Rasanam Grahanam Eva Cha Adishtaya Manasa Chayam Vishayan Upasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, tongue, and nose and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense object. So, as we see that King Puranjana was associated and very deeply attached to his wife, so during the time of death he was only thinking of his wife, and therefore in his next life he was born as a woman. Although he was born as a woman, he was fortunate enough to be taken birth in a king and in a big aristocratic family. That was because of his um, other fruitive activities and pious activities he performed. Although he was very attached to his wife, he did perform a lot of pious activities. That's the reason why he took birth in a king's family. So that being said, it is for sure that each and every action of a person, of a living entity, has been considered to be awarded for his next life. So one should be really, really cautious and pay attention to each and every action a person performs. If the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of animals, then it is sure that his next life would be either a cat or a dog body, and the living entity is forced to enjoy that particular body. Consciousness is originally pure like water, but if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure for the spirit soul. It's, it is pure, but consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. And we have already studied and known that the material world is being ruled by these three major qualities, that is, Rajas, Tamas, and Sattvic. So the kind of the quality the conscious gets associated, it exhibits the kind of a person. So real consciousness is Krishna consciousness, beyond all these three material energies. When therefore one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he in his pure life, but if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, then in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body. Again, he can get the body of a cat or a dog, maybe a demigod or any other forms, if provided the living entity has performed his pious activities. In text 10 of the same chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, Utkarmantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudha nanu pashyanti jnana chakshusha. So the word jnana chakshusha is very important here. It does mean the I, the knowledge of I. What is this knowledge of I? This is the knowledge of understanding how the spiritual existence is there beyond the material existence. Without this knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity lives his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in his next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. Basically, if you see that we all, before coming to Krishna consciousness or taking to the path of devotional service, I'm pretty much sure we all were ignorant about all this entire knowledge. We were just leading the life following our elderly people, and even they led their life ignorantly, following their elderly people's. Just an example of my own, this I was not aware of all these informations, and all only we knew was, okay, do good activities, don't do bad activities. Beyond that, we never understood what was the reason. But that is what, if once we are devoid of this knowledge, then we will never know that, and we will not amend ourselves to evolve onto higher stage. So this requires a great amount of knowledge, understanding Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures, hearing from a bona fide spiritual masters. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate enough, and who takes the shelter of a spiritual master is most fortunate enough. So every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances and enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering from different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. So, persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power of understanding their change of body, and they stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. That is why when you try to explain Krishna consciousness, when the person is totally mentally engrossed, the person is not able to comprehend it. He feels that what foolish they are speaking. They think that there is no other life beyond that. This is the life what they have got, and they want to enjoy to the maximum. As Charvakya Muni, kao piyo mast karo, mauj mein raho. That is what the philosophy they follow. So those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, they can see and differentiate the difference between the spirit and the body existence. So when a person in such knowledge can understand the conditioned living entity he is suffering in this material existence, that is why he starts developing in and progressing in Krishna consciousness, trying the best to give this knowledge to other people in general, also helps the other living entities who are bound and conditioned in this material existence. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. So, having said that, I stop here for today's reading and thank you once again. And please forgive me for any mistakes or